The story begins with Tada, the protagonist who arrives late at the opening ceremony of his university's law faculty. As a result, he doesn't get a chance to talk to anyone, and in addition, he doesn't know how to get to his university. In that, he overhears some girls heading towards the same faculty, so he decides to follow them. However, he loses sight of them in a store, where he spends some time buying things, while the girls are leaving the store. He remains lost outside the place, until he encounters Mitsuo Yanagisawa, a young man who, like him, was also following the same girls but lost their trail in the same store as him. Quickly, they become friends, and head together to the university. There, we learn that Janus, as Yanagisawa prefers to be called, attended the same school his whole life, but transferred due to problems with a friend. Suddenly, a taxi arrives at high speed, and a beautiful girl carrying a bouquet of roses steps out. The protagonist is surprised when the girl starts hitting him with the bouquet, while congratulating him on entering the university. Before leaving, she tells him that she will always be his. The boy picks up the bouquet and starts giving roses to the passing girls to ease the situation, while Janus, still in shock on the ground, realizes this, and starts helping him. Once they are in class, Janus explains to the protagonist about this girl, whose name is Kuko Kaga, who already has her life planned out, and is quite obsessive. We can see that Janus seems deeply traumatized by her. As they discuss this, a girl speaks to them from behind, who turns out to be Kuko Kaga herself. Even though Janus doesn't believe her, she explains that she changed her plans to study with him for the next 4 years. Janus is frightened, runs away, and ends up throwing all his notes, and the girl starts chasing him. Left alone, the protagonist starts picking up all his friends' notes, and that's when Shinami Oka, another classmate, appears and helps him, becoming his friend. After leaving the faculty, the boy encounters a festival of clubs, where each group tries to force them to join. Just as the protagonist is about to be cornered by the Latin dance club, he is rescued by Nana Hayashida, a girl in her senior year of the law faculty, who says that her club doesn't force anyone to join, and that it's their duty to help newcomers. Before leaving, she asked him to call her Rinda, and our protagonist flirts with her, complimenting her lipstick, to which she blows him a kiss. As the evening falls, and on his way home, the protagonist meets Kuko, who explains that she's waiting for Janus. At that moment, Janus calls him on his cell phone, and informs him that he's still at school. Kuko overhears the conversation, so she takes the protagonist's phone, and tells Janus that she'll come to find him. Before leaving with the boy's phone, she returns it, and acts sweet and polite towards him. After this, our protagonist watches her leave, and remembers the time he was hit by a motorcycle years ago, while he was waiting for someone. The next day, we see a dream of our protagonist, where he falls off cliff, with his eyes blindfolded. In that, he is found by someone, but then the image of Kuko comes to his mind, and he wakes up thinking about her. The week passes, and one day at the university, he sees Kuko laughing alone at her phone, so he approaches and asks what she's doing. Then she shows her photos of her and Janus when they were children, and asks if she has seen him because he's been avoiding her. At that moment, we see Janus passing behind her, making signals to our protagonist not to say anything. The boy tries to distract her, but she still notices, and starts chasing Janus. Inside the university, she can't catch the guy, so she asked our protagonist to find out his schedule, offering to pay him. However, since he doesn't want to, she tells him it was just a joke, and she goes to her class. However, when Kuko leaves, the boy overhears everyone talking about her, and how her parents have a lot of money. Then we see that Rinda is standing behind him, observing everything that's happening. Days pass, and we see our boy at his home giving food to his friend Janus, since his parents don't give him any money because he was transferred to another university, to get away from Kuko. The protagonist says to him that he feels bad for the girl, because she hasn't made any friends, and nobody talks to her. This leads to a small argument between them, but eventually, Janus understands the protagonist POV, so he invites him to a welcome ceremony at the film club. Once they are at the meeting, Janus decides to join the film club, and they find out that Oka belongs to the same club. While they are there, the protagonist hears a lot of noise coming from the next room. Despite being warned by the film club members that it's a club of demons, he approaches, and the door opens to reveal the girls from the tea club, who are completely out of control. They end up taking the protagonist to their party. At the party, they have several men serving as butler, but the boy refuses to drink with them. Instead, they make him fight another guy, who ends up saying that he hates real girls, and he will only be interested in 2D girls, for which they end up calling him 2D boy. The next day, Janus meets the protagonist on the way to the university, and tells him that he ended up going to 5 parties that night, with the girls from the tea club. In that, Janus notices that Kuko is looking for him. That's why he says to the protagonist that he will hide, and ask him not to tell her where he is. After classes, the protagonist wants to go home, when suddenly, he is cornered again by all the university clubs, but Rinda saves him again, loudly declaring that he belongs to her club, the Cultural Research Club. When she realizes he doesn't remember her name, she becomes a bit sad, but then changes her mind, and invites him to go out. However, he notices that Kuko is alone waiting for Janice, so Rinda sends him to go to talk to her. The protagonist sits next to Kuko, and she proceeds to tell him that she feels invisible in the university, because she only knows Janice, but he doesn't even talk to her, and no one else dares to talk to her. The boy suggests to her to go together to a club welcome event, so she can meet people, and just then, another girl appears, and invites them for coffee. At the cafe, this girl talks to them for hours about her club, and eventually invites them to their 3-day, 2-night, welcome party. She admits that she's not from their university, but she enjoys talking to people from other universities. After leaving the cafe, they both agree to go together and meet people there in the cafe. The day of the trip to the mentioned party arrives, and the protagonist arrives first, then Kuko appears and asks him if Janice knows about the trip. The boy shows her a message from Janice, and she gets excited, thinking that he's thinking about her. Just then, they see the 2D boy, who is with a group of people going on the same trip, and the protagonist proceeds to introduce Kuko to him. They find out that the 2D boy's real name is Takaya Satu, but from now on, we will just name him Takaya. After that, some white cars arrive, and the club members get out, instructing everyone to fill out forms with their information, and get into the cars. When they are traveling, our protagonist starts to suspect something, because they deviate from the real route, and end up in a place that looks like a mansion. Eventually, everyone realizes that they are in the clutches of a religious sect, and they are being held hostage against their will. The group locks their luggage, and subjects them to lectures, before taking them to dinner. During dinner, some of the guys who went on the trip started to complain, while the protagonist is worried about Kuko, so he comes up with a plan. He pretends to be a believer of their religious sect, and shares his story about the accident he had, and how he lost most of his memory on it. He demands that anyone who doesn't want to be there should be allowed to leave. The sect members believe him and release all the people, including Kuko. However, just when the boy thought he had saved the girl, she returns, saying to him that she wants to stay, just because she knew that he was only pretending and didn't want to leave him alone. They return to the dining hall, and the protagonist takes advantage of the fact that the sect members are drunk, to ask for the key to their luggage. They give it to him, but the girl who invited them to the party in the first place decides to accompany them. Because of this, they start running until they reach the room where their luggage is kept, and finally escape through a window. Once outside, they run far away until they lose sight of the sect, but they still have no signal on their phones to contact someone. While walking, they start talking about Janice, and what Kuko really feels for him, showing that she cares deeply for him. She also shows a playful and cheerful side of her that she doesn't show when she's with Janice. Later, the girl asks him about his life, to which the protagonist tells her that the accident part of the story was real, and he has no memories of anything, but he says to her that he's fine like that, because he likes to not worry about tragic things. After talking for a while, they see some lights in the distance. They hesitate to approach, thinking they might be some member from the sect, but they end up finding Rinda. The day of the trip, the protagonist tells us that they were rescued by Rinda, who was at the university's summer house where her club was having a welcome celebration, very close to where they were. The next day, the protagonist arrives at the university, and is warmly welcomed by his friends. While they are in the faculty cafeteria, Janice tells the boy that he was so worried that he even wrote to Kuko. The protagonist tells him that she must be very happy, and he reflects on the previous day, even thinking that Janice hates him. Later, Takaya goes to class, and Janice tells Oka that since they both don't have classes until the afternoon, they can accompany each other. Kuko appears, and a jealous scene unfolds, as mistreats and threatens Oka, until Janice intervenes and defends Oka, leaving with her. He stays behind because he needs to talk to Kuko, to thank Rinda's club members for rescuing them. After his friends leave, Kuko is visibly nervous and sweaty. After washing up in the bathroom, she talks to our protagonist, confessing that she always does things to make Janice hate her more, and that she can't stop herself. They decide to thank Rinda, and once they are with her, she invites them to join her club, but they decide to visit it first. They arrive at the club room, and express their gratitude, and are invited to participate in the Oha dance. After leaving the club, the protagonist tells Kuko that she doesn't know how to dance, and he intends to join that club. However, she doesn't want to join it because she wants to enter Janice's club and change his mind. Days later in class, we see that Janice is interested in dating Oka, and tells our protagonist that he will finally end things with Kuko, to have a formal and stable relationship with her, which worries our protagonist. Days pass, and Kuko doesn't attend classes, until one day, she invites our boy to a cafe. At the cafe, they find her with the protagonist and Janice. Kuko wants to explain to Janice why they should be together, and shows him childhood photos and memories of her time together. However, he interrupts her, saying he likes Oka, and wants a relationship with her. This news shocks Kuko, who tries to remind him of everything they shared, but Janice explains that precisely because of that, they can't be in a relationship. He tells her that she's special to him, and he can't fall in love with her. This makes Kuko think that he hates her, and she ends up yelling at him, grabbing him and crying. Janice leaves, and she stays behind, apologizing to our protagonist, who waits patiently for her to calm down. Hours pass, and they have to leave, but she says she wants to die. Then, a gothic-looking girl named Nana appears, and tells her that she wants to die, she should go to her rock concert. At the concert, Kuko goes wilding, painting herself black, tearing her pants, and even going on stage to insult Janice, until Nana throws her off stage, and she's removed from the venue. The protagonist takes her to her house and sleeps on the floor, while she rests on the bed. While they are there, she starts crying, realizing that she was wrong to impose her desires on Janice, who also has feelings. He tells her he understands because he too is afraid of rejection, which is why he distanced himself from everyone when he lost his memory. He also tells her that when his memories return, the current version of him will disappear. She asks him not to forget her, and he assures her he never will because he likes her and cares about her deeply. She's surprised by his words, but they continue talking normally. Later, Kuko goes back to her house, and sends a message to our protagonist, saying, "You're afraid of being rejected because you also reject them." The next day, our boy takes a train and goes to his parents' house. When he arrives, he goes to his room, where he sees his yearbook, and some photos fall out. As he picks them up, he realizes they are photos of him with Rinda from years ago. Upon seeing those photos, the protagonist runs off to the bridge, where he had his accident. There, he begins to wonder why he doesn't remember anything, and what relationship he had with Rinda. At that moment, he calls Janice and starts crying. Meanwhile, we can see the ghostly version of his old self observing him. The ghostly protagonist tells us that when he had the accident, he was separated from his body like a soul, and can only watch the empty shell of the new protagonist living his life, but he cannot communicate with him. Meanwhile, on a train returning home, our protagonist receives a message from Kuko, asking to talk. Later, he arrives at the cafe where Kuko is waiting for him. She tells him that they just met, and she wants them to be good friends. She gives him one of the 2 makeup mirrors they were able to bring when they escaped from the sect. The protagonist accepts the offer of friendship and the gift as well. The next day, while Janice and her boy are heading to the university, Janice expresses concern about Kuko, feeling that she might have gone overboard with her actions. They run into her at the university's cafeteria, and she overly exaggerates their friendship, until Rinda calls her and explains that she's helping Coco plan her class schedule. The protagonist stays, observing her, and instead of bringing up the photo, he introduces her to Janice. Kuko asks Janice about his class schedule, and upon finding out that he's in a class with a very difficult professor, he gets scared and runs off to try to change to a different class. Rinda offers them again to join her club, and this time, Kuko accepts on behalf of both of them. The scene shifts to the club room, where they introduce themselves and start dancing. Kuko thinks the dance is simple, but when they begin, she moves like a robot, showing that she's terrible at dancing. After leaving the club, Kuko confronts our protagonist, upset because he's her best friend, and knows how to dance while she doesn't. She bursts into tears, and he realizes that she's carrying a lot on her shoulders, as not much time has passed since her rejection. Later, they go to a cafe, and she apologizes for her earlier behavior. The protagonist lends her his makeup mirror, and she's happy to see that she uses it. Kuko explains that she's trying to sort out her feelings, which is causing a complete mess. He understands, and she keeps talking, saying she hopes to become more like Rinda, as she can see that Rinda is popular, and probably has a boyfriend. Once our boy is back at his home, he thinks about Rinda, and wonders why she pretends not to know him. He also recalls how he used to escape from the hospital every night, following a light outside the window. He would find a girl there who told him that she studies at the University of Tokyo, and advised him to study there too. He realizes that the girl was Rinda, making him question the nature of their relationship. We go back to the antagonist past, where we see that he is a sensitive and fearful person, and Rinda takes care of him always. On the last day of classes, they have a farewell with their friends, and at the end, the boy confesses his feeling to Rinda, and tells her he accepts going to Tokyo, so they can study together. Rinda asks him to let her think about it, and he replies that he'll wait for her the next day at the bridge as always. Meanwhile, the ghostly protagonist watches his current self sleeping, and tells us that he was in love with Rinda, even though she only saw him as a friend, just like what's happening with Kuko. The next day, Kuko and her boy meet at the university cafeteria, and Oka arrives to invite them to a party. Kuko declines the invitation, that the protagonist accepts. In private, the boy asks Oka why she's inviting Kuko when she treats her poorly, suspecting that Oka might have bad intentions. However, Oka says she wants to be Kuko's friend and mend things, so he agrees to help her get Kuko to come to the party. On the day of the party, Oka knows a lot of people, and Kuko is also there because the protagonist invited her. However, she immediately starts arguing with Janice, who is also present. Kuko challenges Janice to confess his feelings to Oka, as she thinks he's only pretending to like Oka to distance himself from her. Out of frustration, Janice calls Oka over, and asks her to be his girlfriend in front of everyone at the party. Oka takes it as a joke, and both Janice and Kuko become upset. Our boy and Takaya intervene and take them to the next room, where the tea club was once again. Afterward, Oka starts recording everything for her club, and at the end of the party, we see that Janice and Kuko ended up drunk just as the protagonist and Takaya were for the first time. On their way home, Kuko is drunk, and despite the boy wanting her to go home, she insists on going to his place to badmouth Janice's all night. He becomes tired of her behavior, and asks to no longer be friends, while returning her makeup mirror. There she refuses to accept it. He tells her it was a mistake to become friends again after she rejected him, and calls a taxi for her, and says he won't wait for anyone before walking away. The next day, Rinda notices they are distant, but when she tries to talk to the protagonist, he explodes and reproaches her for treating him as if she didn't know him from before. After this, he runs off, and she follows him, until he locks himself in the bathroom. Inside the bathroom, she blames herself for the accident he had, and tells him that she went to the bridge the next day to give him an answer, but arrived too late. Later, as it gets dark, Rinda leaves the university, and Kuko is waiting for her at the door. However, Kuko is ignored by Rinda when she exits. Similarly, our protagonist ignores her too when he leaves, but she starts following him, and he runs away. Unable to catch up with him, Kuko takes someone else's bike, and continues to pursue him. Meanwhile, our boy runs without knowing where to go, until he reaches a bridge. Contemplating that if he falls again, he could fix everything and be himself again. At that moment, when he's on the edge of the bridge, Kuko appears, and hits him with a bike, preventing him from jumping. She tells him not to leave her, and that she wants to be with him forever, and that she loves him. After this, the guy with the bicycle arrives with a police officer, and accuses Kuko of stealing the bike, leading her to the police station. At the police station, while waiting for Kuko's father to arrive, she apologizes to our protagonist for all the trouble, and explains that at the party, she wasn't thinking about Janice. She was just angry that Oka easily got what she had been struggling to achieve, and thought she might lose him too. She confesses that she didn't want to acknowledge her feelings for him, and that it would be fair if he rejected her, but he refuses to do so. Kuko's father arrives, and after taking her out of the station, he apologizes to the protagonist, and hopes they can still be friends. However, Kuko corrects him, stating that they are actually dating. The next day, Kuko was waiting for our boy at the bus stop, and they go together to the university. At the university, Takaya notices they are holding hands, and Kuko tells him they are now dating, and she loves him, which prompts Takaya tease our protagonist, until Janice arrives with his dyed hair. In the university cafeteria, Janice explains that after the rejection, he was going to shave his head, but the hairdresser wanted to practice, and ended up with that hair color. He's happy that the boy is now with Koko, as he feels liberated. However, Koko starts teasing him about Oka's rejection. The protagonist interrupts her, saying it's time to go to class, and they agree to meet during a free time. Later, Oka appears, but Janice, embarrassed, runs away, leaving everyone behind. Oka explains that she didn't take his confession seriously because they were at a party. Then Rinda appears, because she wants to talk to the protagonist, but he gets up and runs out of the cafeteria. As the days pass, our boy and Koko's relationship becomes closer, while the boy avoids Rinda's calls and messages. One day, when the protagonist cleans his room, we see that he keeps many corn magazines and a condom in a box. Just then, Koko visits, and after they talk, she asks him what happened with Rinda, but he only says that they had fight, and Rinda tries to help him, but he unloads his emotions on her, and now they're not talking. Koko accepts that explanation, and opens the box, thinking there are chips inside, but she realizes its content, and they both get scared, and end up on the bed. He apologizes, and she tells him their relationship is just starting, but she wants their first time to be in Paris. Afterward, she suggests they go buy cake, and as they leave, they bump into Nana in the elevator, but they don't recognize her without makeup. Days pass, and one day, the protagonist receives an unknown call, informing him about a water leak in his neighbor's room, and that he should check if his room is flooded. He leaves Coco at the university, and goes to check, finding Nana, the girl who saw them in the elevator. She tells him she's Rinda's neighbor and friend, and as he opens his door, she pulls Rinda out of his room, and leaves them alone. Our boy asks to talk in his room, and while they discuss, he starts crying, and Rinda tells him about the love confession he made after they finished school. At that moment, Coco calls him, and says that Janice has a problem. We go back to the past, and we see that while waiting for Rinda, the protagonist overhears her telling her friend that she doesn't consider him a man, and that she doesn't like him at all. This angers the boy, and when Rinda realizes that he heard, she gets scared, and tries to apologize to him over the following days, but he avoids her. However, on a rainy day, she waits for him, and apologizes for being stupid. The protagonist forgives her, saying that he also doesn't like her, but at that moment, the ghost of our boy tells us that his feelings for her triggered, and he hopes she felt the same. In the present, the protagonist is on a call with his girlfriend, while Rinda is in her room. Coco tells him that Janice has had a problem with Oka again, and she hasn't seen him since. She asked the boy to go find him since she can't do it herself, as being locked up with someone of the opposite sex would be considered cheating, just like what our protagonist is doing. At that moment, Rinda leaves, and the boy goes to see his friend. When he arrives, he sees Janice being harassed by a girl from the theater club. To drive her away, the protagonist pretends to be his boyfriend, scaring girl off. Then they enter Jana's room, and he tells him that he asked Oka not to talk to him anymore, and how he lost his trust after seeing everyone talking about him. The protagonist calls Takaya, and suggests having a party to cheer up his friend. Later, the two guys arrive at the amusement park, and find Takaya with Coco, who overheard the call and decided to join the party. Takaya receives a call from Oka, and Coco invites her to the party, leaving Janice surprised. When Oka arrives, Coco treats her poorly, trying to defend Janice, but Oka tells her not to interfere, and that he already asked her not to talk to him anymore. When Oka was about to cry, Coco put some noodles on her face, saying that only she can look cute crying in front of the protagonist. This calms Oka down, and she asks him to record her as she was being funny, which makes Coco and Oka laugh. They spend the day at the amusement park, and little by little, Janice and Oka reconcile. At night, they go to the protagonist's house, where they all have dinner and a sleepover. In the middle of the night, our boy wakes up and talks to Rinda. To his surprise, Rinda was staying in Nana's room, so they went to the balcony to talk. During the conversation, the protagonist asks her what her response was when he confessed to her before the accident. She replies that her answer was no, and that she didn't consider him as her partner. He feels relieved, and asks if she wants to go back to that time, but he doesn't let her answer and shouts that he does want to go back, but immediately takes it back, and realizes what he said. Rinda takes the opportunity to tell him that it's just a dream, and they both go back to their rooms to sleep. Then we see the ghost of the protagonist watching him and saying that he still loves Rinda, but can't separate from his body, as doing so would make him disappear. The next day, Oka and Coco leave early from the protagonist's room. At the university, Oka tells the boy that Coco is feeling sick with the flu, and won't be attending classes. With that excuse, several days passed without them seeing each other, and they only communicate through text messages, until one day, Coco comes to the university for club practice for the festival, and tells him that she's feeling better. During the practice, she distances herself from everyone, and even becomes sad when she sees Rinda helping the protagonist and being friends again. After classes, the boy compliments Coco on her beauty and traditional Japanese clothing, but he notices that she looks sad. Suddenly, it starts to rain, and they run for cover. At that moment, she begins to express her insecurities, saying that she tries to look pretty for him, but she always has negative thoughts that bring her down. She asks if he still loves her, and our protagonist consoles her, ending up kissing her. Meanwhile, the ghost of the protagonist mentions that something similar happened with Rinda, but that will remain between Rinda and him. We go back in time, when the ghosts of the protagonist tells us that Rinda has an older brother they both call brother. One day, his brother tells them that you will introduce them to his bride, showing how deeply in love he is. However, in private, Rinda confesses to our boy that she found out the bride is cheating on her brother. They decide to take pictures as evidence to expose the girl. They take photos of the bride and her boyfriend as they were hugging and entering a room together, but when they were about to take more compromising pictures, Rinda changes her mind, and asks to delete everything, and decides to act like an adult. After some time, the bride comes out of the room, and the two corner her. Rinda asks to talk, and she tries to escape. They end up inside the bride's car, and have a conversation. Meanwhile, the protagonist notices that the brother was watching everything from a window in the room, and he sits on the car hood staring at him. In the end, Rinda forgives the bride, and tells her not to do it again, and promises to forget this incident. After that, they leave, and once they arrive at a store, Rinda starts crying because the boy reproaches her for not doing anything. However, he calms her down, saying that she can always count on him, and wherever she is, he will find her and hear her voice. Rinda holds his hand, and asks if she can trust him, but the protagonist doesn't answer. Back in the present, it's a new day, and the protagonist is at the cafe feeling sad, because Coco got sick again with the flu. Rinda arrives, and our boy explains Coco's condition to her. Before leaving, Rinda tells him that he should listen to Coco's voice wherever she is, regardless of the place because she is his girlfriend. The ghost of the protagonist realizes that, and later at night, while his body sleeps, he wonders if he had responded to Rinda back then, he might not have become a ghost. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, the protagonist wakes up, and he can't control his body properly, and ends up falling off the bed. At that moment, he realizes that he has a body again, and he's no longer a ghost. He immediately calls Rinda's name. After that, he gets up to go see Rinda, but he ends up falling. When he gets up, he's back to his usual self, and doesn't remember why he wanted to see Rinda, or even why he's out of bed. When he realizes that he has a cut on his chin from the fall, so he goes back to bed, wondering what happened. The next morning, the protagonist wakes up with a high fever, and tries to go to the hospital, but he can't walk, and ends up tripping at Nana's door. She comes out to see, and reluctantly takes him to the hospital, and brings him back home, where she hands him over to Rinda, who arrived because Nana informed her. In his room, Rinda starts to taking care of him, and tells him that she already called Coco. The protagonist tells her that he wants to see his girlfriend, but deep down, he feels like he wants to stay with Rinda, because he feels that she is real, and Coco was just a dream, and if he doesn't see her, she will disappear alone with his fever. Just then, when Rinda is helping him sit up, Coco arrives with a bouquet of flowers, and slams the door open, angrily asking if our boy is cheating on her. After that, she says that a guy with a girlfriend cannot be locked up with another girl, because it's infidelity. However, seeing Rinda getting scared, she changes completely, saying it was a joke, and throws away the bouquet. Janice catches the bouquet, and enters the room, playing with Takaya about who he will marry. Janice asked Coco if she's jealous and angry, thinking he was being unfaithful, while Takaya introduces himself to Rinda. Coco apologizes to the protagonist, saying that she didn't really think he was being unfaithful, but she was bothered by another girl taking care of him. Rinda reassures her not to worry. In the end, Janice asks Rinda where her parents live, but since she doesn't answer that question, they subtly change the subject to go into the beach together, including Oka, as they had made pact to be together every time they went on a trip. Meanwhile, the protagonist falls asleep. When he wakes up, he finds only Coco, who apologizes for bringing everyone, and not being able to take care of him properly. She also says that she feels she's not a good girlfriend, and that it would be better if he were with someone like Rinda. The protagonist corrects her and tells her that he only wants to be with her. Coco then tells him that she wants to go to the beach in the summer, but just the two of them, not with the others, so they can be together. She said this because she had previously mentioned that he wanted his first time to be in Paris, but now she would like it to be on the beach. The protagonist agrees, and they both end up hugging each other. Now we see that our protagonist already recovered, and goes out with Coco, and they take the train. On the way, his girlfriend tells him that they call her Robo Chica in the club because of her way of dancing, and also mentions that summer vacation is coming up, and they can go to the beach. The protagonist starts thinking that he hasn't been able to tell Coco about his feelings for Rinda, nor whether she found out that they knew each other from before. When they arrive at their destination, we see that they have gathered with their club, and they show them brochures about the festival they will participate in there during the summer. During the meeting, our boy starts feeling jealous of the club leader because he is quite close to Rinda. He keeps telling himself that he shouldn't feel jealous, as he is with Coco. After the meeting, he asks his clubmates how to get to the beach as he wants to take Coco there as he promised. However, they tell him that without a car, it will be difficult, and even more so if he doesn't have money, as he needs to impress someone from a wealthy family like Coco, and for that, he needs money. Later, the protagonist is with Coco in a cafe, and she forbids him from working, as that would leave him with less time to spend with her. Despite him explaining that he needs money to go to the beach, she insists that she will cover the expenses. Oka appears, and tells them that she has to work, and when she finds out that the protagonist also wants a job, she informs him that they are looking for employees at her workplace. The cafe where Oka works, the two of them wait while observing everything, and Coco firmly says that she definitely can't work there. Night falls, and our boy goes to his room, but before that, he knocks on Nana's door to return the money she spent on the taxi to take him to the hospital, and he brings her some cookies as a token of appreciation. Nana suggests that he should thank Rinda too, but the protagonist tells her that he doesn't have money, and is looking for a job, to which Nana offers him a job as a waiter for one night, on the condition that he brings Janice along. The next day, he tells Janice about the job where they will be paid well, and just when Janice was starting to hesitate, the girls from the tea club show up, and offer them jobs that sound immoral. This prompts both of them to accept Nana's job offer, but without telling Coco. The day of the event arrives, and they meet at the protagonist's house to go together. We find out that the protagonist is lying to Coco, telling her that he's working on a report, and won't be able to use his phone for a few hours. On their way to the event, Janice praises our protagonist's patience for putting up with Coco, but the protagonist thinks that he actually only endures Coco, because he has feelings for Rinda, and he doesn't want Coco to feel too bad. Upon arriving at the venue, they are dressed in erotic costumes, our protagonists as a maid, and Janice in underwear. Later, we find out that it's a birthday party. While the guys are working, the Nana appears dressed as a devil twin, and she shows to our boy that her other twin is Rinda, who has also come to work. When the two of them see each other, they are initially embarrassed, but then start laughing at how they are dressed. Meanwhile, Coco is calling the protagonist insistently, and we see that she has the picture of the protagonist with Rinda from when they were kids. During the party, we see everyone having fun, even Janice, who flexes his muscles for money. On the other hand, Coco gets worried when she doesn't hear anything from our protagonist, so she goes to his house to look for him, but he's not there. She then goes to knock on down his door, but there's no answer there either. Back at the party, the protagonist starts seeing Rinda in a sexy way, and suddenly, she starts taking photos with other girls, and he finds himself liking the way she poses in the pictures. The crowd gathers them together to take photos of them close together, and they are given a light stick that Rinda puts in her mouth. Our boy takes advantage of this, and puts his arm around her waist, posing with her on his leg getting closer, and biting the other end of the light stick. At that moment, we see Coco getting desperate as she searches for him, and eventually arrives at the party, where she sees that the protagonist is with Rinda. He sees her, and immediately releases Rinda, both of them startled to see her. Coco approaches him, throws a drink at him, and slaps him. Rinda starts apologizing, but is taken away by Nana, while the boy takes Coco to the dressing room. He tells her that he was working and asks her to wait for him in his apartment, giving her his key. After finishing work, he rushes there, and realizes he has many messages from Coco, each one showing more concern than the previous one. Finally, when he arrives at his room, he finds Coco in the dark, and she apologizes for throwing the drink and slapping him when his wound was still open. He sits on the floor, and he apologizes to her, explaining that he wanted to be a good boyfriend, which is why he accepted a job without telling her, and he didn't know Rinda would be there. They got carried away, and nothing happened. Then she shows him the picture of him and Rinda as kids, and asks him to tell them the truth. The protagonist starts telling her everything, and says he didn't tell her because he used to love Rinda, and that he didn't want to hurt her, as sometimes those feelings come back, not his memories, but the feelings, and he feels bad about it because now Coco is his girlfriend. Coco questions him about why he didn't tell her when she's only trying to be a good girlfriend, and not think negatively, or feel insecure about him, but he says he wants to be completely honest with her. Coco gets up and hugs him, telling him never to remember the past, and to stay like this with her, because she loves him, and she doesn't know how, but she loves him. She also hints that she wants to spend the night with him, but he stops her, and she confesses that she's feeling anxious because she has no photos or memories with him yet. Until that moment, they haven't made any memories together. He accepts this, and tells her he understands but won't pressure her into anything, just because of his cowardness. He suggests to starting to take photos, and make memories together. The next day, our boy goes to look for Rinda, and when she arrives, she starts apologizing, but he tells her that Coco is fine, and the matter is resolved. Then, we see them by the riverside, and the protagonist asks Rinda if they were never a couple, and if she never felt any attraction towards him. She tells him they were never more than friends, and she only saw him as such. Then he takes out the photo, and contemplates tearing it, but he has an internal conflict, because his mind says he loves Rinda, and he ends up dropping the photo. Rinda picks up the photo, and our boy thanks her for everything, but says that from that moment on, they should pretend to be strangers, because it's very stressful for him to think about his amnesia. Also Coco is still afraid of her, so he wants to start treating his girlfriend well. Rinda understands, and stands up, breaking the photo into many pieces, telling him that it's for the best, even if he thinks otherwise. We then see the protagonist in his room taking photos with Coco, and having fun with her, telling her they need to take pictures outside on the street, so they go out together to take some photos. We find ourselves in the dream that our protagonist is having, which is about what happened after the accident, when he escaped from the hospital and met Rinda. That's when he decides to study at Tokyo University, and promises Rinda to deliver a message to his friend who is also in the hospital. She starts crying, and tells him it's too late, but just as she was about to tell him the message, the protagonist wakes up with that thought in his head. Summer vacation begins, and we see all of our boys' club members gather for the festival. Rinda shows up, and both she and the protagonist act as if they only know each other from the university, but then Coco arrives completely nervous, and even though they try to calm her down, it doesn't work, so the whole group gives up, and is about to leave. However, Rinda tells them that it's time to show that to the boys, and they all start doing a silly dance around Coco and the protagonist. Our boy runs to hug his girlfriend out of fear when they start dancing. In the end he joins the dance, and after a while, Coco also joins them, managing to overcome her nervousness, and finally going to the festival. As the evening falls, the festival ends, and they are told they can go see the fireworks, so the couple decides to go. Before they leave, Rinda says goodbye to both of them, telling them she will see them at the camp. While they are waiting, we see the ghostly protagonist, angry about what happened with Rinda, saying he still loves her in his heart, and because of that, he will become an evil being and make her unhappy. At that moment, it starts raining, and everyone has to run. Days go by, and they find out that the camp was cancelled, and many other things start going wrong for the protagonist. Even on the day when Coco comes to his apartment, he stands outside the elevator to surprise her, but Nana greets him instead, and punches him in the nose, causing it to bleed. In the end, it turns out Coco had used the stairs to go up. Coco came to spend the day with him, and prepare lunch for him, but when he tries to help her, Coco gets nervous, and doesn't let him, covering his eyes with a blindfold, and turn him against a mirror with his hands behind his back. She starts telling him a story about not spying while pretending to cook, in when she brings out the food already prepared. She realizes that the blindfold has fallen off, and he has seen everything. The girl gets nervous, and starts telling him that it's just a joke, that the food on the table is fake, forcing him to laugh. The night arrives, and while they are walking, she confesses that she tried to practice at home, that she got nervous, and her maid ended up doing it. Her maid had even lent her the apron. They arrive at a park, and she asks him to talk a little more there. While sitting on a bench, he tells him that she will take cooking classes, and even skip her family vacation in Barcelona to prove that she can be a real woman. The protagonist tells her it's not necessary, that she can stay as she is, and should go on her vacation, because although he would like to be with her and spend his vacation with her, it would be boring for her. Coco understands, and wants to give him a kiss, but the boy turns his face away, and tells her they should leave. She pretends like nothing happened, and leaves with him. When he was alone in his room, our boy starts thinking that if Coco meets someone else, he won't even be able to complain, and this starts torturing him. Then the ghostly protagonist says it's just the beginning, and it will be much worse. The protagonist is surprised, wondering what was the voice he heard. The next day, our protagonist receives a call from Takaya, who tells him that Janice has been turning down every invitation to hang out, so he thinks Janice is dating someone. As a result, Takaya invites the boy to go out with him. All of this is overheard by Coco from behind the door of the protagonist room. When he notices Coco, he hands her the phone, and she and Takaya speculate that Oka might be the possible girl Janice is dating, so they plan to spy on them. The three of them go to Oka's house, because Coco supposes that if Janice is busy, it's because he will see Oka that day, and being a gentleman, he will pick her up. However, they are caught by Oka, who invites them in, telling them that she has nothing to do all day, and hasn't seen Janice all summer. Inside Oka's house, the boys see that it is completely empty, and Coco asked her about it. Oka tells them that her family had to return to their hometown, and she is now all alone, but soon she will have to move as well. She needs to save money, so she won't be able to go on the trip with her camera as she had hoped. At that moment, Takaya remembers the planned beach trip, and suggests inviting Janice there. Everyone agrees, and they go out to eat at a place Oka likes. On their way, they see Janice entering the restaurant with Rinda, surprising everyone. They start to believe that the two of them are dating. Oka, feeling sad, suggests not interrupting them, so they decide to observe from afar. In the following days, we see Coco visiting Oka's house in disguise so that no one recognizes her. Once there, she says she came to try on swimsuits for the beach trip. While trying the swimsuits, Oka asks if she found out anything about Rinda and Janice, but Coco says she hasn't even seen them again. Then Coco begins to express how she feels about her protagonist, and what happened that day when she avoided kissing him. It made her feel insecure, and she wants her boy to understand her feelings. Oka listens, and advises her to try to understand the protagonist, and see that he only wants to respect her. Coco randomly picks a swimsuits, and they end up choosing their school swimsuit. They start recording themselves, presenting and having fun. On the other hand, at our boy's house, Janice is lending him a swimsuit. Janice tells the proto that he wanted to invite Rinda, but she says she would go on a trip to visit her parents. He also asked our boy if he knows where her parents live, but he only says no. It's a sunny day, and we see Coco with the protagonist on a train, heading to the beach. They start talking about their swimsuits, and our boy tells her he's wearing a boomerang swimsuit. He then shows her the clothes he'll wear later, and Coco recognizes one of them as Janice's. Mentioning Janice, Coco asked the protagonist if he has said anything about Rinda. The boy clarifies that since they agreed to see them, they haven't discussed the topic. Coco finally admits that she's worried about Oka, and understands how she feels, because any guy who sees Rinda would fall for her. The protagonist listens, and assures Coco that he loves only her, and she should be sure of that, hearing her reassurance. Where the two arrive at the meeting point, they realize that Takaya hasn't shown up, so they start looking for him. Takaya honks the car horn, and they find him waiting for them in the car. He is upset because when our protagonist and Coco get into the car, they sit in the back as if it were a taxi. The group only starts driving once they pick up Oka. The protagonist calls Oka to tell her they'll be late, and she says she'll wait for them at a nearby cafe. When they get to the pickup spot, Oka doesn't answer the calls because her phone has no signal. Coco goes out of the car to find her quickly, but she returns after a long while, making Takaya think they are cursed. Despite the delay, Coco sits in the back with a couple. They agree not to bring up the Rinda issue. After a while, the boys make Janice talk to Oka, and he says he heard that she's going through a complicated situation. Oka treats him indifferently and coldly, saying it's something unimportant, and they should be telling her about it. This angers Janice, and makes the whole group uncomfortable. On their way to the beach, they get stuck in traffic, and to make matters worse, it starts raining, even though the forecast predicted a sunny day. Takaya starts joking that one of them must be cursed. They reach the Peach parking lot, and the rain is too heavy, so they can't leave the car. Suddenly, Coco needs to use the restroom, but nobody has an umbrella. Our boy decides to take off his clothes and stay in his swimsuit. Although he hesitates when he realizes he only has the boomerang swimsuit. He eventually leaves the car to accompany Coco to the beach restroom. Coco sees him getting wet in the parking lot, so she also takes off her clothes and joins the protagonist in having fun. Oka takes out her camera, and starts recording them, but Coco takes it away, and pulls her out of the car to have fun together. Seeing this, Takaya and Janice join their friends, and everyone starts playing around. Coco seizes the moment to go to the restroom, but she slips and falls, and our boy jokingly asks if something fell out. Coco calls him a fool, and it's the first time she's called him that. Afterward, they go to eat something, and the rain eventually stops, and the sun comes out, so they head to the beach and have fun. When night falls, they buy fireworks, and set them off on the beach. After a fun-filled day, it's time for everyone to go home. However, Takaya is very tired, and feels that he's about to fall asleep, so Coco suggests driving since she has a driver's license. Everyone agrees, and the protagonist sits next to her to keep her company. At first, everything was fine. Oka, Janice, and Takaya sleep in the back, while the protagonist talks to Coco about her vacation in Barcelona, and he can't wait for her with a gift. However, after a while, our boy starts to doze off, but tries to stay away for her. Unfortunately, Coco also falls asleep while driving. At this moment, the protagonist's ghost yells for help, as he didn't want this to happen, and didn't want them to get hurt. He is seen running and passing through several doors, recalling everything that has happened since that moment from when he escaped from the hospital and met Rinda. She only said hang in there, when he asked for a message for his friend. Suddenly the protagonist wakes up, stepping on the brakes just as they were about to into a guard rail, and fuel into a ravine. He manages to avoid the accident. When the car suddenly brakes, everyone in the car wakes up startled by the incident, but Coco is the most affected. Takaya suggests getting out of the car, and our boy becomes aware of his girlfriend's shock as he sees her state. As they exit the car, Janice notices Oka covering her face, and upon seeing her, they realize she has a wound on her mouth, which further alarms Coco. Coco tries to help clean the wound. The protagonist decides to call the police and report the accident. Later, the police arrive and attend to Oka, informing Coco that they will only need to pay for the damages to the guardrail they hit. However, as they are minors, they need to inform their parents. Afterward, while Takaya drives back home, Coco's father is waiting for her at the drop-off point. Coco is surprised to see him, and gets out of the car, and approaches him, but instead of receiving a hug or a comfort, her father gives her a strong slap that sends her flying, and Coco starts crying, leaving everyone in shock. In the following days, our boy talks to Janice on the phone, who informs him that Oka is doing better, but they haven't been able to reach Coco. The protagonist has an idea, and as he leaves his room, he runs into Nana, who attacks him with a low loaf of bread, and tells him she hates it when he's down because it affects her mood. He apologizes, and Nana offers him a free pass to her concert. Later, they are all gathered at the cafe where Oka works, except for Coco. They begin to discuss the situation, and it is revealed that Coco's father apologized to the parents of the kids, and cancelled their vacation in Barcelona. The protagonist suggests they all go together to visit Coco at her house, as Janice knows where she lives. However, since Oka has to work, our boy proposes to go alone as Coco will feel more comforted seeing him as her boyfriend. Later, the protagonist arrives at Coco's house, and meets her father, who takes him inside, and tells him that Coco hasn't been in good spirits. Coco's father opens Coco's room door, and lets him in. Coco is surprised to see the protagonist, but she turns away and tells him not to come closer. She confesses that she realized she was pretending to be an adult, when in reality, she never was, and she feels so ashamed that she doesn't even want to see anyone. The protagonist gets angry with her, and tells her not to run away from her problems, but to face them. This causes Coco to explode and shout at our boy, saying that he has also been running away from his past, and he has no right to tell her otherwise. He reminds her that it was she who asked him never to remember her past, to which she yells that it was the only thing she could do after he confessed that he used to love Rinda. Coco pushes the protagonist, who falls to the floor, and she tells him that she'll leave him, just like she left her family, her home, and even Rinda, whom she loves so much. She reveals that she had a recurring dream in which they were in a car, and he left her alone after she got out of the car. The protagonist hugs her, and promises never to leave her, and whenever she has that dream again, she should fight not to get out of the car, and he will fight to accept his past. At that moment, our boy notices Coco's father standing behind them. Coco is unaware and continues talking, telling him that she loves him so much, and wants to be with him forever. The protagonist tries to warn her that her father is behind them, but she realizes it when she hears the jingle of her cat's bell, and sees her father there. Our boy tries to lie, but Coco's father tells him that lying is bad, and that he was waiting for them to finish to invite them all to eat ramen together. Coco becomes upset and throws a tantrum, but her father asks the protagonist to prepare the ramen, explaining that they should continue with her daily routine. The boy agrees, and after making the ramen, he returns to Coco's room, and finds that her father has already put her to bed. Coco's father thanks the protagonist, and goes to eat. Our boy realizes that Coco is having nightmares again, so he approaches and tells her to fight, to which the sleeping Coco responds that she will. And that's how the video ends. I will be continuing the series, so make sure to like and to subscribe to not miss it. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.